Hey, what's up good people? Welcome to another episode of Pwned. This video is all about the Spring Thunder by GDop26. This belongs to Snowy, so thank you Snowy for loaning this to me so that I could share it with everyone watching this video. Basically, it is a 3D printed shotgun style blaster with the shell ejecting system. That feature is just out of this world. It is nuts. And the previous time I actually featured a blaster that is kind of like this was the Firefly by Colonel Wasp, and that was very graciously loaned to me by Enoch. And during that time, I've actually heard of the Spring Thunder. I just did not have access to it, but little did I know that some of the people in the Nerf Singapore community actually had these, and I really want to thank Snowy again for loaning this to me. Tim also has a Spring Thunder, and I'm not so sure who else has one. I think Paul has one as well. So instead of rambling about stuff and going off topic, let's bring it all back to the Spring Thunder and my experience with it so far. And I'm going to be upfront right here. I hold this blaster with a high regard, so shout out to GDop26 for actually developing the whole thing. Now for the uninitiated, this blaster is made up of a mixture of 3D printed parts as well as some PVC pipes and some other hardware like metal bars and screws and stuff like that. The biggest downside I have to say at this point of time is that the metal bars rust really easily, especially here in Singapore. Now I know that I mentioned in my previous video that I live in an area with a rather high humidity, but we're talking about Singapore in general. It is a tropical country and these bars right here are super rusty, and Snowy has actually mentioned that this is a common problem among all of the Spring Thunder users here in Singapore. And I know that they've reached out to Harrison, who is GDop by the way, about getting replacements for this arm, or maybe even getting the measurements so that they could find an alternative material to replace this, but he said that he would instead share the STL files or something like that for the 3D printed version. Now the problem with 3D printed arms, especially when you're talking about a pump grip here, is that that will be the #1 failure point. So that is a little bit unfortunate. I hope that something can be worked out between Harrison and other people living in tropical countries or tropical areas, because this is really quite difficult and this is going to be really troublesome. It's very unsettling to actually see, and you know that it also interfaces with every other single part internally. Now if you're wondering why this area is not rusted, it's because this is made of aluminium or aluminum, however you want to pronounce it, which is way less susceptible to corrosion. So maybe arms could be done in aluminum, I'm not so sure. That could be a future alternative or a future workaround. But anyway, talking about this blaster, I must say that it's very comfortable. It is actually of a comfortable length. I know that I'm left-handed, so I'm going to hold it like this, but it does feel very comfortable to me. The pump grip is not too far away, and we're talking about the standard size Spring Thunder. There is a Spring Thunder Mini, which basically is about a couple inches shorter, and you have the pump grip a little bit closer to you. But I think this is of a very comfortable distance, and I love the way it operates. You just prime it back, and then you can also deprime the blaster. But the coolest thing about this blaster, besides the modularity of it, is the shell ejecting feature. Now this thing is super intricate and I really love the way it's done. Now if I were to compare this to, say for example, the Firefly by Colonel Wasp, I gotta say that this is actually less finicky than the Colonel Wasp Firefly. And I'm saying this from personal experience because you guys saw that I did the video. From my recollection, it was quite difficult to actuate the arms to release a shell and to also chamber a shell and then later on extract it out. There was quite a bit of resistance. It felt a little bit clunky. It felt like I really needed to exert quite a bit of strength just to actuate the whole system. But in this system here, it's really quite smooth. On top of that, the loading mechanism is also a lot better than the Colonel Wasp Firefly. Now of course there are notches and ridges to hold on or to block the shells from moving and all of that stuff, but it's not sharp unlike the Firefly. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to bash the Firefly. I think it's quite a cool blaster, but I'm just talking about my experience of the Firefly versus the Spring Thunder. The biggest surprise to me is that this thing is almost entirely 3D printed, yet it just performs so smoothly. That's the biggest surprise for me. I'm quite impressed by this thing. So in terms of modularity, there are slots here where you can actually attach Picatinny rails if you want to. There are also slots on the side where you could attach shell holders or whatever they're called, like a bandolier, I guess. I don't know, just to put shells on the side here. There also is an attachment here, and this is known as the match saver, where you actually put a shell here and then in the prime position you could kind of slap a shell in as a last resort or a last match saver shot for you to take. Kind of like your desperation dart, you know? Let's talk about ergonomics here. I think that the pump grip is very comfortable. It is very wide, very chunky. It's got these grooves here in the design that give it a good grip, but what I like the best is this lip over here, where you can actually rest your palm on I should do it this way for you guys. You can actually rest your palm on this grip and it gives you some extra leverage point or some extra real estate for you to lean on it to pull it back or prime it back. I like that a lot. And while I want to say that the trigger grip or the pistol grip is exceptionally comfortable, I cannot forget or leave out the fact that Snowy actually put a silicone grip that was meant for Glock pistol grips here, so that actually adds to the comfort. I don't know how this thing actually feels without this grip. It doesn't belong to me, so I don't want to take it off in case I might damage it, so I hope you guys understand, but it is quite a thick grip. The next thing I want to say is that the trigger is surprisingly easy to actuate. You don't have much resistance, which is a huge surprise, and it does its job very, very well. So this to me is another plus point for the blaster and adds to the overall ergonomics and operation of the whole thing. Now, before we talk about loading, let's talk about the shells. I have with me 6 different shells, although some of the shells actually are of the same style. And when I say same style, that's because I have some shells that are meant for mega darts. And if you guys watched the previous video, we're talking about cut down mega darts because the original length of mega darts are actually a little bit longer than the shell length. These are actually meant to fit your standard elite length darts. This is a mega dart shell that already contains a mega dart. So I've got 3 of these here and I don't know why I have 3 mega dart shells. And because we're talking about that shell, let's take a closer look at it. So the Mega Dart shell, I believe that this is a newer version of the Mega Dart shell. You actually have the word Shellington embossed on the side as part of the design. And Shellington is the website where GDop sells these blasters. That's shellingtonblasters.com. Now on the other side, you actually have a mega word there. So this kind of denotes what style of dart this is going to take. Now the newer versions also have a different base at the back. These are kind of just flat and flush, and I don't know if this camera can pick the detail up here very well, but I will be adding some B-roll for you guys to check out. Versus what I think is an older style shell. And I have an older style shell here in red, and it has the mega word here, it contains a mega dart, and on the other side of the shell it has the word GDop there. It doesn't have the word Shellington. Now the biggest telltale sign is the fact that this actually has an O-ring on the back versus the newer ones that don't have an O-ring, and that is because this used to be, I believe, now I may be completely wrong here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but this would actually help with the seal when you're firing darts out of the shell. But with the newer versions, this O-ring, instead of always being placed on the back of the shell where it's easy to actually lose or drop out, the O-ring is now in the blaster itself, which saves you a lot more trouble and it still provides the same kind of seal as you would on the back of a shell. Now those of you eagle-eyed viewers would have noticed that there are some cracks here. Yep, the shell here is cracked on the back lip, and I've been told by Snowy and Tim, who both own Spring Thunders, that this is the failure point of the shell. This is the part that actually breaks off the most because shells always fly out of the blaster, and there's a very high tendency for the thinnest part of the shell to actually chip off when it bounces off the floor, when it hits the ground. So this is something that I guess you could view as expendable. That you want to be able to invest in a printer and then constantly print shells because of the way you're going to use it. So that is the number one problem with the shells. And Tim and Snowy would always say, well, we could always just reprint new shells. So I guess that's the way this whole system works, I think, when you get into the whole culture of Spring Thunders. I think that's my personal opinion. Next up are shells that actually take standard size darts, and this one actually takes a pair of standard size darts, and I gotta say that it actually squeezes the dart foam quite tightly against each other because I loaded these in. So while they actually work quite well, I'm not sure how well this is going to be picked up by the camera, but you can actually see the darts being squished together. I also want to point out that on the side of the shell is the word GDop as well as the word birdshot. So I don't know what birdshot means. It could mean 2 darts in a shell, I'm not so sure. But yeah, I just wanted to show this to you, and alternatively, you could load 2 half-length darts instead of 1 full dart. So this could have a capacity of 4 half-length darts in one shot on one shell. Your choice. Last but not least, I've got shells that actually take Boomco darts. Yes guys, Boomco darts. When's the last time you guys saw Boomco darts? Look at that, this is super nostalgic. It's got the rubber tip with the straw body. That's so cool. So Tim actually invested quite a bit into Boomco darts, and he said that it's because he really loves the accuracy. And the thing is, with a standard Spring Thunder, you can actually have shells that take up to 3 Boomco darts per shell. And on the sides of these shells is the word GDop as well as the word Flechette. So I don't know if this means that it was designed by Flechette of Monochrome Industries or it's just called the Flechette shell. I don't know. But now that we're done with the shells, let's load them up and do a quick firing demonstration. Let's go. So I've decided to load the blaster up with a few different shells just for fun. First of all, I'm going to put a Boomco dart shell at the match saver slot. Then I'm going to load in this exact order, the Boomco darts that will go in first, so they'll be the last shell out. The next shell would be the Mega Dart shell, and then the first shell would be this birdshot shell. And now I'm going to talk to you about the loading. So there is a flipper tab here, and this is the same tab that helps to kind of shift the shell up into the chamber. But at the entrance of the chamber is 2 pegs, one on each side, and you have to make sure that when you load your shells in, it goes past both of these pegs. If not, it would not work properly. Now you have to take note that there is a gap between the end of this flat piece, or this flat, I'm going to call it a pedal or a flat piece, to the start of the chamber is a gap that you could accidentally get your finger stuck in like that, and then you would find it difficult to pull your thumb out. So yeah, you have to kind of do some maneuvers so that you could slide your thumb out. That was something that I experienced when I first loaded a shell into this blaster without actually practicing, quote unquote. And that was because I would try to load a shell with my index finger and my thumb, just like this, kind of push it in this way and then use my thumb to just push in the shell like that. And that's the reason why I would get my thumb jammed in there. So after some practice, I found out that the best way for me personally is to hold the shell in like a fist and then load it with the middle of my thumb right there. I'm just trying to find the best way to show it to you guys. So I would do this and then kind of push down like that, and then so you see my thumb isn't all the way in. I'm just using the middle of my thumb to push that in, but I need to make sure that there are 2 clicks and not just one. You guys heard 1 click so far? That's the second click right there. I needed to make sure that that would happen. So yeah, I'm just going to do it in one smooth action, and then you'll see that it's actually quite easy to do once you get the hang of it. So here we go. Just like that. It's really simple. Now I've loaded the blaster up with 3 shells, but I have to say that this version, or the standard size of the Spring Thunder, actually holds 4 shells, plus 1 up here if you have the match saver. I've only loaded it up to 3. Alright, so let's now move on to the firing demonstration. I'm going to be standing this way so that you guys could see the shell being ejected, and I don't know if the shell will bounce off anywhere. I guess I'll worry about that later. But first of all, when you prime it, just make sure that you pull it all the way back so that the first shell will come out. And it's really, really smooth. Hear that sliding sound? The shell has came out already, and then you push it forward and it'll just chamber in. So now I'm gonna fire it off at this wall right here, and I know that you guys won't be able to see the darts flying out, but that's okay. It's not the point of this video. Although the first shell holds 2 standard length darts. And then we are going to prime the blaster again, and it will eject this shell, and right at the end of the pump stroke, it will chamber the second shell. Here we go. That's out. And then the second shell is loaded now and chambered, and this is the Mega Dart. Whoa, I hit the mic. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry guys. Okay, that was quite scary. I hope that I didn't shift the whole camera. That was quite scary. So anyway, I'm just gonna do it one more time. Here we go. So this one is gonna be the Boomco darts. And now for the last shot, I'm just gonna prime the blaster. There will not be any more shells here. I'll be using the match saver, and all I'll be doing is a smooth action of kind of slapping this in like that. So just one action, kind of cupping this and slamming it in like that. So let's do that, and you guys will see how cool this action is, like how smooth it actually is really. Not so much about the coolness factor. Here we go. Super cool, right? Now I gotta get the shell out. Firing demonstration is over. If you guys are wondering, what is the problem if you have a cracked shell or the lip of the shell is cracked? Oh, I didn't even realize that my buttons came out. Like, just having too much fun firing the blaster. As I was saying, the lip on the shell is actually very important to the way the blaster functions. Now this lip is actually what keeps the shell held in place in that clip area, and it also is essential to the way the blaster ejects the shells out. There are pins and kind of like arms that go around this and pinch it to extract the shell and fling it out. So without the lip, or if the lip is chipped, then you wouldn't get that functioning properly. So this is actually really important. But I do believe that there are users in the Spring Thunder community that use TPU to print their shells, and that is quite squishy, so it's not so prone to breaking as compared to these standard PLA printed shells. It's a failure point, but it's really, really cool to the function, and I'm sure that a longer lasting solution will be found very, very soon. And that, everyone, basically is my overview of the Spring Thunder blaster. I think it's an awesome blaster. Now I must say, through discussions with Tim and Snowy, and you guys probably saw a little bit of this in the video where I visited Tim's place, there is a different internals, or different set of internals with a wider kind of barrel. I don't know how that works exactly, but the wider barrel is created so that a slightly wider type of shell could be used. And having a slightly wider shell means that you could actually have even more dart options or loading options into the shell. So you could have an expanded capacity of, instead of 2 full-length darts or 4 half-length darts, you could have 3 full-length darts or 6 half-length darts in a shell. That also means that you could increase the capacity of boom core shells from 3 to 4, and that is actually backward compatible with standard size shells as well. So that is a piece of information that I thought was important that I wanted to share with you guys. Although I might not know every single thing about it, I will make sure to provide whatever details I can in the description box down below. Now, if you guys are wondering where you could get one of these Spring Thunders for yourself, well, you gotta check out Shellington Blasters. I know that they do sell hardware kits from time to time. I don't know if they actually offer full builds. I'm not surprised if they do, but just make sure that you go check out the website. I will also put a link to GDop26's Facebook page because it's a Spring Thunder group. I'm in there and I think it's quite a cool community because you actually see people sharing advancements they've made to this platform, which is always a good thing. All in all, I think it's really cool. Yeah, there is a novelty factor to this, and I don't think anyone would actually bring this to a standard Nerf game because you'd easily be outgunned, right? You have to not only load your darts, but you have to load shells as well, so that could be quite cumbersome. But this thing is so well made. The whole construction is actually really surprising. It is so intricate, and I heard that there are actually about 7 or more springs in this thing. So just a single action of priming the pump, pulling it back and pushing it forward, you're actually actuating 7 springs, or maybe even more. I might be wrong. Shout out to Harrison, aka GDop26, because I think this is a very well made, very well thought out blaster. I'll be honest with you guys, initially I was very apprehensive to the whole idea of a Spring Thunder because it was 3D printed, and I really hate the sound that Springer 3D printed blasters make. If it's 3D printed stuff rubbing against 3D printed stuff, it's that obnoxious sound. But this doesn't have that. You guys heard it already. Oh, by the way, I have to say that this over here is not carbon fiber. It is a carbon fiber vinyl wrap. This is actually a PVC tube, just in case you guys didn't realize. But I know that you guys are way smarter than that, so yeah. And that is it, everyone. We've come to the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed the content. Once again, this is the Spring Thunder by GDop26. This one was loaned to me by my buddy Snowy. Thank you very much, Snowy. I really appreciate it. So you guys know what I think are the pros and the cons of this blaster. I love the whole concept of it, but the biggest thing that irks me the most is the rust that is appearing on these arms. They are just really obnoxious. And when I say obnoxious, I really mean it. It's obnoxious to the point that I kind of don't want to handle the blaster just because of that. I mean, handling it is really a joy, but just looking at it, like, that really irks me to no end. Okay, I'm gonna end the video now. Drills pay the bills, and teamwork makes the dream work. Peace.